Well, hey everyone, we are brought to you today by AudiofileUSA.com, the most gorgeous used records on planet Earth. AudiofileUSA.com only sells excellent and near mint vinyl records, even some mint ones still sealed. So search, dig, and get a box of gorgeous used vinyl at AudiofileUSA.com. And we're also brought to you by the Groove Washer, the best record cleaner in the land. Groove Washer also now sells Groove Guard archive quality record sleeves. So get all your vinyl accessories, cleaners, sleeves, and more at GrooveWasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10. And with that, on with the show. Well, hey everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 329 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And today we have a world first here on the show. The living Jarboe is on the show not only to talk about her experiences in joining, recording, and touring with Swans, as well as her solo career. Jarboe is on the show to make an announcement on an upcoming vinyl release that will be available in April 2022. But I'm going to let her tell you all about it. I'm not one to ruin a surprise, but it is big news, and it's a global first here on the Vinyl Guide podcast. But let's just say you can go over to thelivingjarboe.com, where you can no doubt read more on Jarboe, her announcements, her vinyl artwork, and Swans paintings, and all the stuff that's available in her online shop. That's thelivingjarboe.com. Oh, and by the way, we have hundreds of other episodes and interviews here on the Vinyl Guide podcast, including episode 189 featuring Michael Gira of Swans, episode 327 with Matt Pike of Sleep, episode 315 with Araldo Bernocchi, episode 305 with Dale Crover of Melvins, episode 302 with Al Jorgensen of Ministry, and lots more. Just subscribe to the Vinyl Guide in your podcast app, scroll, and enjoy. And with that, let's have a chat with Jarboe here on the Vinyl Guide podcast. Jarboe, thank you so much for joining us. It's quite an honor. I've been a listener of your work for many years, and so
cool.
I was very excited to hear that you have a new surprise you're going to share today. Is that right?
In terms of vinyl, which is your thing, right? I have 3 vinyl things coming out and they're all retro. They're all reissues. And the first one is what was originally released as the Skin Project, and I'm putting it out on my own name because Michael said, "Why don't you put it out on your own?" So if you say "put it out on your own," that means my name. Right. So that's going to be Skin, Blood, Women, Roses, and the vinyl is the original vinyl. It's just been remastered. But we haven't touched the listing of the songs. But the CD version is going to have all the thing came out in all these, 12 inches and stuff, the different songs. And so that's going to be on the CD is going to have the bonus tracks, because you can put those on there because you have more room. So the single vinyl that's coming out on Record Store Day in Europe is the original album, but it's been beautifully remastered.
Oh, excellent. So that's going to be out on April 23rd, which is Record Store Day.
Right.
Primarily in Europe, or will Americans?
Well, they have Consoling Sounds has distro in the United States, so there should be. But this is a very limited edition. I think it's like 300. It's a color called Dracula, which is like a red and black kind of a transparent thing.
Very on brand.
So it's going to be. That's going to be the original thing. And then Phil Pulio, who I know from Swans, he did the artwork. I wanted to completely redo the artwork. I wanted to use the original photograph of me as a child, but I wanted it to have an overlay of blood and kind of like skin texture. So he did all that. And so it looks faded, like you're talking about the past.
Okay.
So that was the whole idea, to make it aware that this is history. And then the back we changed with an image of a woman's hands. And then I had conveniently cut my leg a couple of weeks before. And so I had photographed the blood on my leg. And so he superimposed that into the hand. So that represents blood on your hands, which is one of the signature tracks on that album that I've done so many times. in Swans as well as solo. It's just, I guess that's kind of my song, I guess. But so we illustrated it with that. And so it's a completely different, more of a, I guess you'd say, showing my dark sense of humor.
Right.
Which I wanted to come through on this particular version.
When you get a cut on your leg, is your first instinct to take a picture or to tend to the cut?
Well, this was a particularly dramatic stream of blood. So I just wanted to photograph it because I was shocked. I just nicked myself on the staircase. So I thought, oh, well, it's kind of a neat, this might come in handy. So I photographed it. So I think with me, it's interesting. I'm always focused on the art, quote unquote, aspect of something more than anything else. So that would take priority over tending to myself. That's right.
So I'm a bit fascinated how you approach your art, because you're quite prolific with your music, your painting. You continue creating quite a bit. Do you have a method of how you manage your creative time? I assume you're creating every day.
It comes in cycles. And the other vinyl thing I did, of course, was it was actually wildly popular. And thank goodness that the majority of the interest in terms of sales happened pre-pandemic, because the postal system has been greatly influenced globally because of that. And so I was getting orders from all over the world. And I had this idea to take an album that's very dear to me, the Soundtracks of the Blind album, because my mother's voice is on there. And so it's a very personal album for me. And it was just the two of us at that point. And so he decided to reissue these, a matte kind of a cardboard kind of a texture. And it made it perfect. When I got copies, it made perfect sense for me to paint on them and personalize them. And so I just came up with this idea of art editions. So I've done that now with anything I'm on, whether it's Children of God, whether it's Great Annihilator or Soundtracks. I elaborately paint them, and I got more and more elaborate, more and more, to the point where it was taking like 3 weeks, sometimes a month to do it, because I treated it like I was doing a painting. And so, and then it was layers of lacquer and layers of top coat and having that dry and mixing my own paints and blah, blah. So that became this thing that was insane. I mean, it was just, the entire dining room was just, forget it. It was just paint everywhere. And I ruined so many t-shirts. That's okay. But so that was a massive success, is the point. And there were orders coming in from all over the world. I understand that people can buy these and then try to sell them for a whole lot more money on eBay, but that was never my intent. My intent was I was selling it to actual collectors, of people that loved the Swans records. That wasn't the whole goal. It was never for what I've seen around the internet of people turning around and selling them for a fortune. And, so now, because that's, as far as I know, unavailable, now people were still interested. So now I say, take out the records, pack the exterior box so it doesn't get dented, and send it to me, and I'll just do the box. So I do that for a lot less than, the records in there. And I can't even buy the records anymore unless I go on to, some site myself, and they're going to be used. So I don't do that.
So at any given time you would have, I'll just let me know if this is wrong, but you would have a dozen different art records going at one time that you would revisit over a matter of days
10,
and weeks.
Much more than 10.
Okay.
More like 80.
80. Okay. At one
at
point.
Least.
So you have them kind of all over.
That would just be that batch. And then I started getting so overwhelmed with orders that I had to write everybody and say, look, and the girl that was helping me to take care of all the orders, just say, hey, can you, this is going to take about 6 weeks. I mean, you're going to have, I'm just a human being. I'm not a robot. There's no one helping me do this. And then, of course, I had to invest heavily in shipment boxes and bubble wrap. And I really packed, because I learned that you have to pack those corners really, really well. Mm-hmm. So these things would be seriously packed. So they would cost quite a lot to ship to other outside the U.S. Mm-hmm. So, this was a huge operation. It really, really was. So I'm still doing it. And I even turned to doing the CDs. I'll do it. So that's still there, but it's not as fevered because I don't have any pristine, with the record copies anymore of soundtracks. You'll have to buy it yourself and send it to me to paint it. So that's another vinyl obsession thing that I did. And then there's another reissue coming out later this year. That's on the Circle Music in Greece, and they're doing Sacrificial Cake. So that's going to be a big deal. I recorded that in 95. So that's coming out, and again with altered artwork, remastered.
Sacrificial Cake was never on vinyl originally, was it?
It was a bundle on Alternative Tentacles with Drainland.
Okay.
So they were all together as a set. It was never on its own. And then, but that's been, unavailable for a long time. So hopefully that's going to be, that'll be popular. And then also the third thing is I decided primarily because it had cred, which was Thurston Moore had done a split. And so with this black leather Jesus and I, of course, was very part of the original industrial culture movement sounds. I mean, I was listening to SPK and, Fabian Gristle and all these groups. And so this was what led me to hearing Swans for the first time, was a radio show that played stuff like, that they put into the industrial kind of sludge and electronic vein. So I decided to do a split with them, and that's also they're going to be taking pre-orders for that on their own label, which is, it's called Summer Interlude Records. And I'm excited about that because it's a split. So what I did was I took Walls Are Bleeding, which is something I did pre-Swans. And it was something that I recorded for a couple of hours, right? It uses delays. It was all done on Scully, reel to reel, and manipulated heavily. And it got really insane. And so I edited that down, and I took all the different pieces and completely reimagined them. So it's completely bizarre remix. So that's going to be on one side, and then their electronic piece on the other side. But the thing I'm really excited about is I was wondering about what artwork they were going to use. And so I suggested I would submit something. And so they were all excited. So I'm going to have my artwork on the front. So I'm pretty excited. Yeah. So that'll be super cool.
Are all those coming out in April? Just
the split with Black Leather Jesus is, he said he's taking pre-orders March 25th on their record label. And I think that's going to be like a 7-inch.
Right.
So it'll be this insane mix that I did of the Walls. And of course, that was only released on cassette. So, and it was a part of the mail order culture, So this is very retro. This is going back to pre-Swans for me. So I'm pretty happy to have that come out.
So you seem to be going in pretty heavy with vinyl projects right now. Is it something new to you? Are you a fan of vinyl? Is it something that intrigues you?
It came to be because in terms of things I was involved with directly, not Swans, it came to be with the project with the touring and the working with Father Murphy, the Italian duo. And so we did a split with Consoling Sounds for our tour, for our merch table on our tour. And so then I was going to tour pre the pandemic. I had a wonderful tour planned for 2020, which was canceled because of the pandemic. And so I recorded an album specifically for Consoling Sounds and called Illusory. And I wanted, they are primarily a vinyl label, and they have a wonderful record store in Ghent, Belgium. It's incredible. They have a coffee bar in there. It's amazing. And so that was, again, because they're focused on vinyl, and I was going on tour. So I was going to be selling those on the tour. So I just kind of, and then curiously enough, a number of independent labels, boutique kind of labels, have come to me wanting to do vinyl editions. So my sense is that's something that there's an interest in now with fans and with people that collect music, that they want the vinyl edition. Because I'm not having anyone say, "Hey, we do the CD for us." They're all saying, "Hey, will you do this vinyl for us?" So that's what happened with the Circle Music in Athens, Greece, and that's what's happening with the Black Leather Jesus split, and that's what's happening with Skin, Blood, Women, Roses, because these are vinyl-oriented labels. They don't want the digital. And the good thing for an artist is they don't want your digital. It's not like the old days when they wanted everything, the CD, the digital, the record, and you wouldn't make any money at all. You would have to wait till they,
recouped,
covered all their expenses. And it's amazing. People don't know what those expenses can be. And so I really like this new model of they will do physical, limited edition. See, I like that, something that's really, really special as an object. Mm-hmm. That's a small run that's really cool. A lot of attention to what it looks like. I think that makes it collectible, and people like that. So that the idea that they do that with or without the CD, and then you get all the digital for streaming and all that stuff, then it makes the artist can actually make some money, and that's great.
Oh, okay. So do you have a record player at home?
Yes, but it's old. It's old.
All the best ones are.
Very old. Yeah, but I think that this is just the model that I've seen now, the current state of record labels.
Now, you mentioned you were releasing some music that's before you joined Swans. What sort of music? What projects were you involved in pre-Swans?
Just solo. It was. Basically manipulation of contact mics and really I would say I would describe it more as performance art that had an audio component, and it was a really good training and exercise for me for what would come down later. Working at Swans and living in New York, in the most dangerous neighborhood in America, I guess, and so it was just taking poetry and then kind of I think my aesthetic then was exploring states of psychological states of mind and mental illness and because I kind of had this idea that depending on what country you were in, you would be called spiritually enlightened, or in another country like this one, you would be called, ill or something. And so I kind of decided that there was this fine line of psychiatrics, TRACKS. So I decided to explore, severe states of inner demons, as it were. And so it was very much a physical performance. So so that's kind of the direction I was headed in. And so that would have wound up in, doing art, just extreme art galleries and theaters and that kind of thing. And there was some interest to pushing me in that direction at that time. Mm-hmm. And then I fell in love with two groups, and one was Unsturgeons and Neubauten and one was Swans, because I hadn't heard anything like that coming from anybody before. And I really liked the sloganeering of the Filth album. And at the time I was a Bondo boxer and a weightlifter, and I was really muscular and really strong, and I would exercise 3 to 5 hours a day lifting weights. And so I found very inspired listening to the lyrics, the sloganeering of that particular album. Mm-hmm. And so I became really motivated with my bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. So that's what I wanted to do. And so it was all about physicality. So you can see how that kind of meshed with Michael's vibe at the time.
Mm-hmm. And the repetition, the rhythm of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, his physicality was more about the worker-boss relationship and doing construction work, which is what he was doing at the time for money.
Okay.
So my physicality was about pushing myself to the limit with bodybuilding and with extreme emotional duress with these performances. And so that's kind of, when you kind of think about it, it kind of makes sense that mm-hmm. those two people would get along or would be attracted to each other.
So when you joined Swans, was it as expected? What were you expecting going into it?
We'll be back after these messages.
Hey everyone, let me tell you about AudiofileUSA.com. AudiofileUSA.com is a fantastic place to buy used records online. AudiofileUSA.com has a heap of inventory, like tens of thousands of records you can search through online, and they are all excellent and near mint quality. These are your final upgrades, beautiful records that you can enjoy for years to come. AudiofileUSA.com is a family-owned and operated business, and they work hard to find the absolute cleanest records in the world and make them available to you. Head up there now, AudiofileUSA.com, search and dig through their selection and find the deals. Get a box of love on its way to you now from AudiofileUSA.com. Now, I know that you know that the Groove Washer is the best record cleaner in the world, but did you know that Groove Washer now makes archival quality record sleeves too? Yep, the world's best record cleaner is now making some fantastic sleeves and record accessories for a limited time introductory offer. The Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves are absolutely fantastic, so head up there now and try them for yourself. Go to groovewasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10. That's the Groove Washer record cleaners, record sleeves, and other protection for your record collection. That's groovewasher.com.
Now we return to the program, already in progress.
No limits.
So when you joined Swans, was it as expected? What were you expecting going into it?
Well, when I went up there with an open mind, originally it was to interview for a zine, an art zine that I was doing with a couple of people. And so I think I was allowed to come to the rehearsal, but I wasn't allowed into the room, the padded room, which had the moving quilts and stuff on the wall to buffer the sound, which is hilarious because you could hear the sound halfway up the street. But in those days, that neighborhood was so raw and so mean, burned out buildings everywhere that no one cared about that volume.
Which neighborhood again? This is in New York.
Well, this was Avenue B and East 6th Street. So the door to the bunker,
that's a Whole Foods now. That's a Gap and a Whole Foods. And
my building, of course, has that hookah restaurant on the corner. And when I lived there, and we lived there, it was like a bodega. But the actual, it wasn't on Avenue B. It was called 93 Avenue B, but the door was the metal door, the steel door with police locks and deadbolts, which was unbelievably huge. That the entrance was on 6th Street. It was directly across from the school, the red brick school. And so there was that door, and then there was the second door, which is another big slab of a door with a wood beam that would go over it. And that was the load in for the gear into the rehearsal space. But this was raw space. So when I went up there and I went to the rehearsal and I sat outside the actual room where they were rehearsing, it was incredibly exciting to hear how, the walls were shaking. I mean, it was, and so that was really exciting. And then when they came out, I got to meet them and talk to them and stuff. And so I decided to, try to get to the bottom of, who was the mastermind, as it were. And then, of course, turned out to be Michael. And we started corresponding and communicating. And I sent a demo up there, like a job, like you do for a job with what you can do. And it was all my voices and all my textures and all my accents and everything I could do as a singer. And I sent that up there, deliberately, because I wanted to work with this. I wanted to work with this band. And I was willing to do anything to work with the band. And I at that time, there was a talk of me buying a bass guitar, and they were going to have 2 bass players. I was willing to do that with no experience at that time of playing a bass guitar. And then I had all this keyboard training as a child. And so then it came down to, they would get rid of the cassette that they used on stage. Harry Crosby, the bass player at the time, would roll the sounds up and down with the foot pedal. So then it was like, okay, we'll make these sounds live with the sampling, and they just come out with the Ensoniq Mirage sampling keyboard. So I was a beta tester for that, and got this, went to Pennsylvania and picked up this keyboard and sampling keyboard, and it was beyond insane because there's no monitor. You have to do it with numbers, parameters. So you get this notebook, and it's really interesting. So you kind of are surprised with the sounds, and then you have to boot the operating system before you can put in your safe sounds on diskettes. So the funny thing was, I learned that, but that was like the summer of '85 when I went up there. In '84, I was the schlepper, the person trudging through the snow, getting physical press kits photocopied, and the person going to the mailbox. So that led to me being the person answering the fan letters and sending out the promo packages. So that was what I did. And then Michael would have this mountain of writing. He'd say, okay, sort all that writing, sort it all together. So it's huge.
Writing as in lyrics and things like that?
It's stories. Okay. And he had a funky old typewriter that kept breaking. So I bought him a new typewriter because I couldn't stand it anymore. You know, how horrible it was with this old typewriter. So I bought him a new typewriter. And then, it just was all this grunt work and then going and picking up these reels of tape at Lighting Plus on Broadway. These reels, about $250 each, and they were very heavy. And so one time I made the mistake of putting the bag on my shoulder and walking from there back to B, and my shoulder like had a lot of pain in it for a very long time. I think I messed up my nerves. So that was the horrible stuff before the actual audition. And then I passed the audition. And what was funny was I was louder than anybody in the room because it was it wasn't a amplifier. I mean, I had an amp, but I mean, this thing was like solid, electronic sound blasting through and so it was louder than anybody else. So I had to turn that down, and I think they were shocked at how loud it was. So so that led to the first gig in '85, and I came along right when they hired Al as well on bass. So that the first show was in '85 in LA with Sonic Youth and a bunch of other groups are out there. So so that was very interesting.
Now I know a little bit about synthesizers. I used to program them, and the Mirage, as I recall, used to break down all the time. Was yours? Did you have a lot of technical issues with that? Getting ready for a live gig and it wouldn't boot?
My report was, it's not a touring instrument. It's a studio instrument. That was my report. So the
that didn't stop them.
I have horror stories. The very first show in this big warehouse in Los Angeles, everybody's there, Black Flag, Jesus and Mary Chain were in town for some reason. Everybody was there. And it was packed, of course. A whole SST crowd was there. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so the sound check is great, no problem. So then you clear off the stage, you go back, you're on, right? This is my first live show. So the thing did what you just said. And so I learned that I had to hit it to make it, work. And so I did that whole show regularly, taking my fists and hitting the keyboard to make it kind of work. So I did, and people thought that was part of the performance, and they didn't understand. They thought that was, that's what she's going to do. She beats the keyboard.
Right.
But instead I was trying to unjam it. So that was beyond stressful. I mean, I was sweating so hard during that show. So that was the sign of things to come, but it was rented. So I thought, mine is not going to have those problems. So this road case, this massively expensive, huge road case, that put in this thing, right? Put this keyboard in, this sampling keyboard in. We take this thing to Europe. We take this thing to Eastern Europe. We take it to what is then we take it to Prague when it's, the Czech Republic. We take it into what is now Slovenia. We take it into all these places. When you drive into Prague at 3 a.m, the red flags were coming from the buildings, And so I was telling a friend the other day how we got through these borders, since everything we did was technically illegal. My recollection is the Sandman charmed a lot of the people to get us into the border. And I remember one lady, it was a woman border guard going into Prague, and he got out and was all laughing with her and buddy. And so we got to come in there with this rig, all this stuff. And the thing was, is I think like that movie about the Coke bottle or whatever that falls from the sky in Africa, I think that I somehow impacted culture because I played all these places with that keyboard, and man, they were fascinated. People would come up and just stare, like all interested in it, never seen anything like it. And then I also had the long dreadlocks and braids. Nobody had seen that before. I mean, that was the craziest hairdo in the world in those days. So, but the problem that happened was this thing had to be babied. It was temperature sensitive. So this road case with this heavy thing, just you understand how heavy this was. I had to take it out of the van every single night and bring it into where we were staying to protect it. And I can remember a hotel in Amsterdam, the Quinton Hotel, the stairs were just just straight up. And I had to shove this thing, and push it and shove it and bring it into my room. You couldn't leave it on the streets of Amsterdam, in the back of the van, even though we would park with the doors against the wall. And so the point being is that this thing broke down repeatedly during shows. We would blow the electric, and I don't know how many shows. There was a famous show that we did in San Francisco where we blew the electricity about 7 times or something. So when everything blew, obviously this machine has to be reinstall the operating system, then reinstall your sounds, and that takes a long time. Mm-hmm. And then we did a tour, the Kings of Independence tour with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and all these bands were on this bus together, and mm-hmm. and we played this famous show in Hamburg where this thing malfunctioned, of course. And of course, it's a huge crowd. It's sold out. It was so sold out that the kids that had tickets that couldn't get in turned over a police car and set it on fire in front of the show. And it was a nightmare. And there was smoke and fog all in the room. And so the Butthole Surfers had just finished before us. And Gibby, when they took their sampling stuff and they threw it onto the ground in disgust. And he came and he told me, this is all this grease from this smoke in the air. It's going to destroy your electronics and your gas. So I was very careful to cover everything and afraid of the oil getting on everything. And it still malfunctioned. And I don't know, this the horror stories. And then the funny story was one song would start with a really heavy, brrr. And so I was supposed to do that too, right? With an incredibly loud sound. So I went to do that, right? Malfunction. And instead it goes do to the PA.
Change the ambiance. Yeah.
Like a horrible cartoon sound. And I remember Al, his boots, stirrups and his boots looking at me through his hair, like that, I was like, oh God. So I immediately stopped playing and I reboot.
I can imagine Michael's the vein in his head popping after hearing that.
There's a photo of the two of us from that Hamburg show. There's a photo of him standing by the keyboard, right? Because the things malfunction. And he's just he's really angry. So, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. I mean, I was so happy to say goodbye to that thing. I mean, all due respect to people that had success with it. I was just saying it's not a touring instrument. And the fact that you have to load in your operating system. So if you're in a loud group, drawing a lot of electricity with your amps and your PA and all that, and you're playing all these questionable concert venues, and you're going into Eastern Europe in 1986, 87, I guess it was, not the best instrument to be bringing
reliant on, actually.
No, so I was stressed out. I was full of stress all the time. Yeah,
I
with this keyboard.
I imagine Michael would have been a very demanding taskmaster to work with. Were you able to have freedom in the performance that you would do on record and on touring, or did he control all of that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you kind of learned. I learned a lot. I learned to. It was really working all those years in Swans and live as well as the studio was incredibly good training and education for me for what would eventually be the album with Neurosis and performing 6 shows with Neurosis, because. But I learned a type of etiquette, which was you get out of the way of the guitars. And so, but what happened with Neurosis was I was very respectful, staying back from the guitars. And then I remember Steve Until saying to me, "What's this space here between what you do here vocally and that vocally?" And like I realized, oh well, then they have a little more leniency with me, you know what I mean? So I think I learned minimalism and pulling back and a sense of restraint, like being reserved. So you wouldn't be florid or overly verbose in anything at all, whether it was background vocals, whether it was lead vocals, whether it was your keyboard playing. And I, many times, hum and sang and told other musicians what to play, guest musicians. Mm-hmm. I would sing the melody, like say the string section on "Goddamn the Sun." I sang that part to the string section, and so you kind of learn what's accepted, what's appropriate, and what isn't appropriate for that aesthetic. And it was good because I think he would say to me vocally, he would say, "That's too many notes. Yeah. So I think if I were to leave with one particular thing, it would be too many notes. So I learned to pay less notes singing, less notes playing. Too many notes. That was a constant thing he would say. That's too many notes. So yeah. So you could do a whole lot of stuff, but you didn't do it. Oh yeah, and I have to say, the first big fight that I saw was the drummer, incredible drummer, Rolly Masselman. He was the first drummer when I first met the group. There was this in Europe, and I was not on that tour as a performer. I was on that tour as a roadie, and it was very interesting because I was the only one who was teetotal, and everybody was smoking and drinking, and it was an unbelievable experience for me. So they had a fight, and you know what the fight was at the end of the show? Physical fight. Too many notes. Like he played too many percussive, embellishments.
Right.
Really.
Have you heard that Buddy Rich tape where Buddy Rich is on the tour bus just yelling at his musicians?
No.
Okay. All right. Yeah. One day, if you want a good laugh, just Google Buddy Rich yelling, and there's a whole tape where his musicians, taped him just dressing them down at the end of a gig, and it's quite funny. I always imagined that was we
went through all that.
Vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we did, and that if you notice, there was quite a revolving door. I mean, I was the only one that was there from the time that I was officially, part of it until he decided to terminate it. And he ironically terminated it, the tour that I thought was the most successful in terms of the venues and the audience response. And it was a fluid, incredible show. And I will say the thing about that last tour that I did was I took liberties with I Crawled. I took a lot of liberties with I Crawled. I turned it into a performance piece, and I became 3 or 4 characters in the one song, and and it ended with sub voice, and this was all me performing. There was no effects or anything to sub my voice or to give my voice a little girl sound or any of that. It was all me performing, and so that was very theatrical, in my opinion, and that was what I could do. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that I was given that chance to do it, I knew that I knew I could do it, because I wasn't going to be fired because he had decreed it was the last tour. So I decided to just take it and run with it and give it everything I had every single night. And to me, that is my finest moment in that entire project was that particular live performance of that song.
Mm. Was he comfortable with you taking that moment?
Well, he wasn't exactly. He wouldn't exactly. He didn't really compliment you or make you feel good about anything. I think the only judgment I got was when I had the I guess strength or something to go see them when they reformed, without me, of course. And so when I went to see that performance, they did a version of that, which I didn't like. I thought it sounded like almost like disco. I didn't understand why they were doing it. And so in the dressing room, when the group asked me what I thought, and I said I didn't like that particular, my version, meaning the one that I performed, is what I meant, to me was vastly superior and was the pinnacle of that song. And then Michael came into the room and said, he said, yeah, what she did was gut wrenching. So that was a high five to me. That was
I
did have to wait a while to get it there.
Do you still have fond memories of Swans, or is there still a lot of pain there?
I think now I look at it as not trying to say anything negative about the military, or anything, but I kind of look at it as a military exercise. I mean, it was really for me, it was incredible training, and I think, what's the saying about if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. The whole experience made me tough as nails. And once you've started as a woman in this group, you got to remember I did an entire tour, a year or so, without ever opening my mouth. I just played the Mirage. I didn't sing. And so we played skinhead venues and places like that were very rough, and there weren't any women in the audience, or girls, any females. And I was, catcalled and spit at and hit and knocked downstairs and slammed up against the wall and kicked by bouncers and people that refused to believe I was in the group. And so I think now, once you've gone through that, I mean, you can take anything. It's like the confidence I have now, like if I'm on stage or I do tours sometimes, I'm right in the middle of the audience with the mic, out in the room. You're fearless. And that's because I went through so much, I guess, abusive shit as a performer, especially in the early years. Now, as time went on and I was allowed to sing, and I sang, women started coming to the shows, and then a whole new audience came in. Mm-hmm. So that audience would gather around my side of the stage, and then it was a completely different change of audience.
Yeah. I seem to notice this bending of the band's trajectory once you were in there, right? But I'm shocked to hear. I was unaware that first tour, all you did was play the Mirage. You didn't use your voice, which is really kind of your instrument, right? That it seems strange to me that that wouldn't have been incorporated early on.
I mean, now since I don't know how many albums now. I do it all. I write everything. I play all the instruments. I play all the sounds. I engineer it. I mix it. And so I think now I'm and the tour that I'm supposed to do in November. Of course, it all depends on this virus. This tour supposed to do. I'm really excited about it. If you could please let it happen, since I haven't been able to tour since over the pandemic. And this is a tour of Joseph von Weissum, the lutist and lute player. And so I'm going to be playing the keyboard in addition to singing. And so that'll be great, because that's going to be the very first tour that I've done playing keyboard since 1997. So that's going to be a big deal to actually try to do that. And I've been trying to figure out how to do it and make it interesting and make it comfortable, because to do one I can do, to do the other I can do, but to combine them is a different animal. So I've been studying how people like Nick Cave do it, and I noticed that he'll play and then he'll get up he'll sing, and then he'll sit back down at the keyboard and get up. So live, I think that's the kind of approach I'll take. But it's I would say I don't have any, if I go there and if I start analyzing, only focusing on negative, then I mean, it's always canceled out with what I learned. And I'm grateful for what I learned. And you mentioned the repetition and the waves of composition. That's part of me now. And that's how I think. And so that's not something I'll ever undo. So I feel like that is part of who I am, is Swans. So I cannot take that and get rid of that. That's my identity. That's my training. So
absolutely. Well, that was chapter 1, right? And you've got so many solo projects. And again, you're very prolific, constant. I mean, probably, an album every 18 months, something to that effect.
I became so consumed with the painting that I haven't done anything didn't do anything in 2021. And that's a real shock, because I've been, massively like obsessive, but it's like the energy went towards this painting. Because then when people discovered the paintings, I started getting commissions for canvas paintings.
Right.
And so taking a break from the paintings, is helpful. I mean, I'm working on one right now. So I mean, I'm as busy doing that as I am, the audio, and I've got to get back to finishing an album that I've started, and I've been working on it now for months, and I've got to get back to finishing that, and then I've got a bunch of other collaborations going on too. One's with Chris Force, and one is and that's pretty much done, and then the other one is with Brian Castillo, who worked with me on Anhedoniac and Just Bird and Disciple, and he's out in the state of Washington. So we now have 23 songs that we've done, and that's and that's sounding incredible, because he's a real audiophile. He's got an amazing home studio. So we don't know what we're going to do with that yet. So we'll see. It's huge. So yeah, there's a lot of things that come along all the time, and I've said no to a bunch of stuff because I just can't. I just can't, to the point where you're just dead. You can't say yes to everything.
Sure. So this Blood, Women, and Roses reissue, at the time, this is 1986, 1987, I think.
Well, this was recorded in 1986, before Children of God. So yeah, 1986. It came out in 87.
What was the impetus at the time to create that album? It was a lot of cover songs. There's some Gershwin on there.
Yeah, I mean, I think originally it was the idea of a singer and the song, which was not what Swans was at the time. Right. So originally my memory of this it was about me and about exploring the voice and singing. And Michael enjoyed the experience too much in the studios in London, that he wanted to do his own. And so
Shame, Humility, Revenge one.
Yeah. So then it became like a project kind of a thing. And but I mean, originally it was just, trying to give me a platform to explore the idea of the singer and the song.
At what point did it go from, I guess, your project to, because I always saw Shame, Humility, Revenge as a companion piece to this. At what point did
yeah. I mean, we did 10 songs for Another World, and I don't know what's happening with that material now. I did ask him, and he said, well, do this first. So if I would love to be able to get the songs that I perform on 10 Songs for Another World and get those out, I would love to do that. I don't know, because, when Children of God was reissued yet again, it did not have any of this World of Skin material on there. So I asked what's happening with that, and then he said, put it out on your own. So that's what led to me trying to figure out, how I was going to do that. And so that I thought of Consoling Sounds. So I don't know what he's going to do with the other stuff, but I think that's fine with me, because I'm very happy to put anything that I've done out on my own, you know.
I seem to recall the album also came with a poster. Is that right?
Yeah.
Will the reissue have that?
No, I'm trying to get away from the snake motif with this. And so the poster was, you know, as I remember, it was a black and white poster of me with the python. And this was from the video, the 1000 Years video, where I've got the wearing a sarong and a pearl bra, and have these snakes. And all these snakes, the ones that we did for the video were from a farmer, a local farmer for the video. And they were lively snakes. They weren't like Hollywood snakes. And they were very active. And one of them tried to bite me. And yeah, that was intense. One of them was, I think it was shedding its skin or something. And then the man gave me the skin later on after it had shedded. And but then the ones for the poster and the photo shoots that we did, those were Hollywood snakes. They were, you know, professional snakes. They were cold. They were like, oh my God, they were just like cold. And it felt really weird to have those cold snakes on me after the warm ones in the video shoot. Okay. And the giant python, I mean, there's a lot of funny things that happen. The python climbing up my leg, you know, stuff, you know? So, but I mean, once you've lifted, like in the video, you've lifted a great big heavy python above your head. They're like, look, relax for the camera. And you're like, you know?
Look like you're having fun.
It is a living creature, you know. It's not like a weight, lifting weights.
What's your general opinion of the music you created earlier in your career? Now you're revisiting some of it. Do you enjoy it? Do you get self-conscious?
I think it was kind of wildly experimental. And I think that I still like, you know, experimental has been overused now, but I still like the idea of you know, exploring and not being predictable. So I think I remain unpredictable, which is fine for me, because that's, you know, it holds my interest to do something. And then I've also explored this idea of ballads that are, you know, like Illusory. The song Illusory is a ballad. And I think that Fate, Trance, and the song Fate on Atulpa. So this is exploring the idea of a romantic ballad kind of a thing, but it's not done in a traditional, you know, top way. It's done in more of an abstract, like a poem, or to make you think, and the listener to think. And that's what I want people to do. But if you're talking about the Blood, Women, Roses, there's something on there that is explored very deeply on the CD, which is the 12-inch version, and that's the Come Out song. And this thing is crazy, and there's a rap, like a queer rap that I do on it, and that rap, how that came about was we lived in a very interesting place there on 6th Street, because it just had this small grated window with an old Radley, didn't work air conditioning unit in it. That was the only out to the outside of the living space, because it was bunkers, the cement storage area, I guess is what it was designed for. So interesting street people would walk by there 24/7. And I started recording stuff I would hear that was very interesting, because I mean, it was crazy stuff going on. I mean, it was drug dealers and prostitutes and arguing and just kind of people talking themselves. And so this person walked by and they were talking to themselves, I guess. And that ultimately became that rap. And it was, and he was saying, you know, I pull my gun, you know, I pulled the trigger out, you know, and so he was just kind of saying that, you know, like a street person, like, yeah. And so that became this rap, which, you know, now has a different idea when you use that metaphor. It's more like a sex toy or something. So this song, because of the rap and because of the exploring that stuff, that became kind of like a popular song in the gay clubs in London and stuff. So see, this is the kind of thing I did, and we deliberately put it against a very breathy version of the man I love, So you got the yin and the yang, You got this hustler kind of woman, and then you've got this breathy man I love. But I did this before with Neurosis. The most popular song apparently on there, at least from what I can tell, people love that Within. Well, that is another example of being inspired by the action outside that window, and this was again somebody walking by, just muttering, just God wants to take me, it will. So I just said, hey, that's a great lyric. So that's how that came about.
I'm curious, what music do you listen to in your downtime?
You might be surprised. I listen to a lot of Coltrane, and I like kind of abstract jazz. I primarily like instrumental music. I'm very particular, I guess you would say, with what I allow myself to be, kind of let it absorb into me. Right. But I really love Coltrane. So.
Mm-hmm. And do you listen while you paint? Is it a motivator while you create your art?
Just silence. No, just silence my paint. And of course, I like a lot of the old bands like Popple Vuh. I had every single vinyl of Popple Vuh at one time, and if you listen to Popple Vuh, of course I had those records when I moved to New York, and if you listen to Popple Vuh, you'll hear some definite references to a lot of the music that we did in Swans, in my opinion. The guitars, especially the introduction of the acoustic guitar, and the melodies, and then there's kind of a percussion in it, and so I think that this kind of it's hard to pin down what Popple Vuh were doing, but if I had to join any band at all in that era, it would definitely be Popple Vuh. They were so incredible, and so Popple Vuh and abstract jazz, and I love a lot of the soundtrack work that Warren Ellis has done. With and without, with or without Nick Cave. He's done some incredible soundtrack work.
So we're pretty well into 2022 now. What sort of art or music are you working on that we'll hopefully see this year?
Well, finishing the new album, and then preparing to go on tour. And that's going to be, a lot of work with the guitarist, and I will be P. Emerson Williams, the guitarist I'll be performing with on this tour with Joseph Van Weissem. So I think that all that is a lot, and not to mention the fact that I'm in the process of selling my house. So that's going to be a lot this year.
Okay. All right. So, look, Jarboe, thank you so much for coming on the show. I want to remind folks that the reissue of Blood, Women, and Roses will be out Record Store Day, April 23rd. You said it's a limited number. How much? Do you know the number of issues?
All I know is that the first 300 are in this Dracula color.
Okay.
That's all I know. And I guess after they sell those, it'll just be black. The black vinyl. So
okay, all right. Well, grab one of those red vinyl copies if you can. It sounds like they're primarily in Europe, but hopefully we'll see some in America and Australia and different places around the world. And of course, people can always go to thelivingjarboe.com. I'll put the links in this episode page. You still do art commissions, so people can connect with you there. And then you're also going to be touring, and so I imagine before that you're going to be on the hunt for a semi-working Mirage keyboard that you could take with you.
No.
And a very heavy road case.
Yeah. Oh, no. That thing nearly killed me, honestly.
Excellent. All right, Jarboe. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
That was just amazing. Thank you so much, Jarboe, for coming on the show. Again, everyone, go to thelivingjarboe.com course, there's going to be links where you could read more on her vinyl announcements and even get yourself ready to pre-order the vinyl version of Skin, Blood, Women, Roses, available April 23rd. Very, very limited pressing, put out by Consoling Sounds. And that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share these episodes on your social media. Put them on Facebook, tweet them out on Twitter, put them on Instagram. Hell, you can even make a TikTok dance if you want to. And you know what else helps is positive reviews on iTunes. Head up there, give us 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10 stars. Say something nice, make us blush. That is always appreciated. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Send your thoughts to Nate at thevinylguide.com or follow or tag us on Instagram at Vinyl Guide. Until next time, keep spinning.